Sarah was a tourist from America. She came to London for the first time. She had saved money for 3 years to make this trip. In her mind, London was a magic place with red buses, big clocks, and special guards in red coats. But her trip did not start well. Her plane was late by 5 hours. When she got to London, the rain was falling hard. The taxi driver took the long way to her hotel and charged her too much money. When she got to her hotel, they told her there was a problem with her room. They gave her a smaller room that smelled like old smoke. Sarah did not want to feel sad. She told herself that tomorrow would be better. She looked at her map of London and made a plan. She would see the royal guards at the palace first. The royal guards were famous. They wore red coats and tall, black, furry hats. They stood very still and never smiled. People tried to make them laugh or move, but they never did. That night, Sarah could not sleep well. The bed was hard, and she could hear people talking in the next room. She thought about going home, but she had waited so long for this trip. She would not give up now. In the morning, Sarah got up early. She put on her best clothes and her good walking shoes. She took her camera and her map. The sun was out, and the sky was blue. Maybe her luck was changing. She took the train to the palace. Many people were on the train. Some were going to work. Some were tourists like her. A little boy smiled at her. She smiled back. The boy gave her a small candy. This made Sarah feel happy. When she got to the palace, many tourists were already there. They were taking pictures and talking in many languages. Sarah had to push through the crowd to see the guards. They stood very still, like statues. Their red coats were bright in the sun. Sarah took out her camera. She wanted to take a good picture to show her family at home. She moved closer to one guard. He was young, maybe the same age as her. He stared straight ahead, not looking at anyone. His face showed no feeling. Just then, a strong wind came. It took Sarah's map from her hand. The map flew in the air and landed right at the guard's feet. Everyone looked at Sarah. Her face turned red. She felt very embarrassed. Sarah did not know what to do. The wind had put her map at the feet of the royal guard. Everyone was looking at her. She felt her heart beat fast. Would the guard be angry? She took a deep breath and walked forward. She had to get her map back. It had all her plans on it. As she bent down to pick up the map, she looked up at the guard. She expected to see a face with no feelings, like a statue. But something amazing happened. For just 1 second, the guard's mouth moved. It was a tiny smile, so small that maybe only Sarah saw it. It went away fast, but Sarah was sure she saw it. The guard had smiled at her. Sarah picked up her map and moved back into the crowd. She felt warm inside. The guard was a real person, not just a statue in a red coat. He had feelings too. He had broken a rule to give her a small smile. That smile changed how Sarah felt about her whole trip. Yes, her room was bad. Yes, the rain had made her wet. Yes, the taxi driver had taken too much money. But now she had seen something that most tourists never saw. A royal guard had smiled at her. She stayed and watched the guard for a long time. Did he smile at other people too? No, his face stayed serious. He only smiled at her. Maybe he felt sorry for her when her map flew away. Or maybe he thought she was pretty. Sarah did not know why he smiled, but it made her feel special. A family from Japan stood next to Sarah. They were trying to take a picture together, but they needed someone to hold the camera. The father looked around for help. Sarah stepped forward. "I can take your picture," she said with a smile. The father gave her the camera and showed her which button to push. Sarah took 3 pictures of the family with the guard in the background. The family was very happy. They said thank you many times. "Would you like me to take your picture too?" the father asked Sarah. Sarah said yes. She stood near the guard, not too close. The father took her picture. When he gave the camera back, he also gave her a small pin with the Japanese flag on it. It was a gift to say thank you. Sarah put the pin on her coat. Now she had two good things, a smile from the guard and a gift from the Japanese family. Her day was getting better. She decided to keep looking at the good things that happened, not the bad things. After seeing the royal guard, Sarah walked through a big park near the palace. The park had green grass and many flowers. People were sitting on the grass, reading books or eating lunch. Dogs ran and played. Sarah found an empty bench and sat down. She took out her map again and looked at it. Where should she go next? London was so big with so many things to see. She wanted to see them all. An old man sat down at the other end of the bench. He had white hair and a kind face. He was feeding small birds that came close to the bench. "First time in London?" he asked Sarah. "Yes," she said. "How did you know?" The old man smiled. "You look at everything with big eyes. Only new people look like that." The man's name was George. He had lived in London all his life. He was 82 years old. He came to the park every day to feed the birds. "What did you see today?" he asked. Sarah told him about the royal guard and the smile. George laughed. "You are very lucky," he said. "I have never seen a guard smile. And I have lived here all my life." George told Sarah about the best places to visit in London. He knew small museums and old shops that most tourists never found. He drew circles on her map to show her where to go. "And this place has the best tea in London," he said, pointing to a small street. "My wife and I went there every week for 50 years. Is your wife here too?" Sarah asked. George's eyes looked sad. "No, she died last year. I miss her very much." Sarah felt bad for asking, but George smiled again. "It's okay," he said. "Talking about her makes me happy. She loved this park." Sarah and George talked for a long time. He told her stories about old London, about the big war when he was a boy, about the Queen's first day as Queen. Sarah felt like she was hearing history from someone who had seen it all. When it was time for lunch, George invited Sarah to go with him to a small food shop near the park. The shop made sandwiches with fresh bread and good cheese. "My treat," George said, "to welcome you to London." The sandwich was the best Sarah had ever eaten. She and George sat in the park and ate together. After lunch, George had to go home. His legs got tired in the afternoon, he said. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Sarah asked. "Every day," George said. "Rain or sun, I am here for the birds." Sarah said goodbye to her new friend. She felt happy inside. The guard's smile had started something good. Now she had met George and learned about London from a real Londoner. Sarah left the park feeling happy. She decided to visit one of the places George had marked on her map. It was a small museum about the history of London. Not many tourists knew about it. She walked for 20 minutes. The streets got smaller and older. The big crowds were gone. This was the real London, where real people lived and worked. The museum was in an old house with a blue door. When Sarah went inside, she was the only visitor there. A woman with gray hair smiled at her from behind a desk. "Welcome," the woman said. "Not many young people come here. How did you find us?" Sarah told her about George from the park. The woman smiled even more. "Ah, George sent you. He is our best advertiser. He sends us all his park friends." The woman's name was Helen. She showed Sarah around the museum. It had old things from London's past. Tools that workers used 200 years ago. Clothes that children wore, pots and cups from old houses. Each thing had a story, and Helen knew all the stories. "This was my grandmother's," Helen said, showing Sarah a small silver spoon. She got it on her wedding day in 1890. Sarah loved hearing about real people from the past. In big museums, the old things seemed far away. Here, they felt close and real. Helen took Sarah to a back room that was not open to all visitors. "George's friends get the special tour," she said with a wink. The back room had very old books. Some were from the 1500s. They were the stories of people who had lived in London hundreds of years ago. Helen put on white gloves and opened one book very carefully. "This man wrote about the big fire of London," she said. "He saw it with his own eyes. He was standing right where our museum is now." Sarah felt like she could see through time. The people who wrote these books had walked on the same streets where she walked today. They had seen the same river, the same sky. When the tour was over, Helen would not take Sarah's money. "Friends of George don't pay," she said. "Just promise to tell others about our little museum." Sarah promised she would. She wrote about the museum in her travel notebook. She would put pictures and stories on her blog when she got home. Before she left, Helen gave her a small book about old London stories. "A gift," Helen said, "to remember us." Sarah put the book in her bag. Now she had 3 good things from her trip: the guard's smile, the pin from the Japanese family, and the book from Helen. The bad start to her trip seemed far away now. After leaving the museum, Sarah was hungry again. She looked at her map. George had marked a place for good food. It was a small shop that made pies. The shop was down a small street not far from the museum. When Sarah found the shop, it was very small with only 4 tables. A big man with a red face was behind the counter. He was putting hot pies on a shelf. Come in," he called to Sarah. "Just made fresh pies. Beef and onion, chicken and mushroom, cheese and potato." The pies smelled so good. Sarah's stomach made a noise. The man laughed. "Sounds like you need a pie right now," he said. His name was Bill. He had made pies in this shop for 30 years. His father had made pies here before him. The shop had been in his family for over 100 years. Sarah chose a chicken and mushroom pie. Bill put it on a plate with some green peas on the side. He brought it to her table with a cup of hot tea. "Best meal in London," he said proudly. He was right. The pie was perfect. The outside was brown and crispy. The inside was hot and full of flavor. Sarah ate slowly, enjoying every bite. While she ate, other people came into the shop. They all knew Bill. They talked and laughed like old friends. Bill remembered what each person liked to eat. He asked about their families and their work. A woman came in wearing a nurse's uniform. She looked very tired. Bill gave her a pie and a cup of tea without her asking. "On the house," he said. "You look like you had a hard day." The nurse thanked him. She sat at Sarah's table because all the others were full. "Do you mind?" she asked Sarah. "Not at all," Sarah said. "Please sit." The nurse's name was Mary. She worked at a big hospital nearby. She had just finished a 12-hour shift. "Bill's pies are my reward after a hard day," she said. "They make everything better." Sarah and Mary talked while they ate. Mary had been a nurse for 5 years. She loved her job, but some days were very hard. Today, a young child had come to the hospital very sick. But now the child was better and sleeping safely. "That's why I keep doing this job," Mary said. "For the good moments when someone gets better." Sarah told Mary about her trip and the guard's smile. Mary laughed. "My brother is a royal guard," she said. "I'll have to tell him that someone broke the rules today," and smiled. "Please don't get him in trouble," Sarah said quickly. Mary laughed again. "Don't worry. I won't tell which guard it was. But my brother will find it funny. He says standing still all day is the hardest job he's ever had." When they finished eating, Mary had to go home to sleep before her next shift. But she gave Sarah her phone number. "Text me if you need anything while you're in London," she said. "Any friend of Bill's is a friend of mine." After her pie, Sarah felt full and happy. She decided to visit one more place before going back to her hotel. George had marked a small bookshop on her map. It was an old shop that sold used books. The bookshop was down a narrow street. It had a green door and windows full of books. A small bell rang when Sarah opened the door. Inside, books were everywhere. They were on shelves from floor to ceiling. They were in piles on the floor. They were even on the steps of a small ladder. A young man with glasses looked up from behind a desk. "Hello," he said. "Looking for anything special?" Sarah wasn't sure what she wanted. She liked all kinds of books. "Just looking," she said. The young man smiled. "Best way to find a good book. Let it find you." His name was David. His parents owned the shop, but they were on holiday. He was taking care of the shop for 2 weeks. His real job was teaching at a school. Sarah looked at books for a long time. She found a section about London history. After visiting Helen's museum, she wanted to learn more. She found a book with old pictures of London streets. Some of the streets were the same ones she had walked on today. David saw her looking at the book. "That's a good one," he said. "My grandfather took some of those pictures." Sarah was surprised. "Really? Which ones?" David showed her 3 pictures in the book. They showed the river and some old buildings. "My grandfather was a photographer for 50 years, David said. "He loved this city. He said London tells a different story every day, if you know how to look." Sarah bought the book. It would help her remember all the places she had seen. David put the book in a paper bag. Then he took out a small notebook. "We ask visitors to write their names and where they're from," he said. "We've been doing it since the shop opened in 1920. Sarah wrote her name and New York, USA, in the notebook. David showed her the first page of the notebook. The first name was from a man from France in 1920. "We have all the notebooks from all the years," David said. "People from every country in the world have come to our shop." Sarah felt like she was part of something big and old. Her name would stay in that notebook. Maybe someone would read it in 100 years. Before she left, David gave her a bookmark with the shop's name on it. "So you remember us when you're back in New York," he said. Sarah thanked him. She had another gift to take home. The guard's smile had started a day full of meeting nice people and finding special places. The next day, Sarah woke up feeling good. Her room was still small and the bed was still hard, but now these things did not seem so bad. She had seen the real London yesterday. Not just the big famous places, but the small special places where real Londoners went. She got dressed and looked at her map. George had marked many places. She could not see them all in one day. She decided to go back to the park first and talk to George again. Maybe he could help her choose. When she got to the park, George was sitting on the same bench. He was feeding the birds again. He smiled when he saw Sarah. "Good morning, young lady," he said. "Did you sleep well?" Sarah told George about all the places she had visited yesterday. Helen's museum, Bill's pie shop, and David's bookstore. George was happy that she had enjoyed them. "Today is a good day for the river," he said. "The sun is out, and the water will be blue." He marked a spot on her map where she could take a boat ride on the river. Not the big tourist boats, but a small boat that local people used. "Ask for Captain Jack," George said. "Tell him I sent you." Sarah thanked George. She spent an hour sitting with him, feeding the birds. He told her more stories about London. He had seen the city change so much in his long life. "But the river never changes," he said. "It's the heart of London." Sarah went to the place George had marked. It was a small wooden dock away from the big tourist areas. A man in a blue cap was sitting in a small boat. "Are you Captain Jack?" Sarah asked. "That's me," the man said. "Need a ride?" "George from the park sent me," Sarah said. Captain Jack smiled. "Any friend of George is welcome on my boat. Hop in." The boat was small but clean. Captain Jack helped Sarah step into it. There were seats for 6 people, but today Sarah was the only passenger. Captain Jack started the motor, and they moved slowly into the river. The water was brown, not blue like George had said, but the sun made it shine in a beautiful way. "George has been sending me customers for 30 years, Captain Jack said. "He knows everyone in London, and everyone knows him." As they moved down the river, Captain Jack showed Sarah things she would never have seen from land. Old steps going down into the water, small doors in the walls along the river, places where people had tied up boats for hundreds of years. "Under this bridge," he said, pointing up, "my grandfather used to catch fish. The river was full of fish then." Sarah took many pictures. She felt like she was seeing the secret London, the parts that tourists in big boats would never see. Captain Jack told stories about the river as they moved. He had been a riverman all his life. His father and grandfather had worked on the river too. He knew every turn, every bridge, every building along the water. When they got back to the dock, Sarah tried to pay him, but Captain Jack shook his head. "George's friends get the special price," he said. "Free." Sarah thanked him. Captain Jack gave her a small shell. "From the river," he said, "for good luck." On her last day in London, Sarah had a problem. Her plane would leave at night, so she had all day to see more of London. But there were so many places on her map now. George had marked them, and Captain Jack had added more. She could not see them all. She decided to go back to Buckingham Palace. She wanted to see the royal guard again. Maybe she would see the same guard who had smiled at her. She knew it was not likely, but she wanted to try. The palace was busy with tourists again. Sarah pushed through the crowd. She looked at each guard carefully. Then she saw him. It was the same guard. She was sure of it. He had the same face, the same serious eyes. Sarah stood and watched him. She did not expect him to smile again. That had been a special moment that would not happen twice, but she wanted to thank him somehow. His small smile had changed her whole trip. She took out her notebook and wrote a note. "Thank you for the smile. It made my trip to London special." She folded the paper and held it in her hand. She could not give it to him. The guards were not allowed to take things from tourists. A woman in a uniform stood nearby. She worked at the palace, answering tourist questions. Sarah went to her. "Can I leave a note for one of the guards?" she asked. The woman looked surprised. This was not a normal question. "Which guard?" she asked. Sarah pointed. "That one." The woman thought for a moment. "I can't promise, but I can try. No name on the note, please." Sarah gave her the folded paper. "Thank you." The woman put the note in her pocket. She did not promise anything, but Sarah hoped the guard would get her note. Sarah spent the rest of the day visiting the places that George and Captain Jack had told her about. A small garden hidden between tall buildings, a tiny coffee shop where the owner knew 100 ways to make coffee, a street market where old things were sold. At each place, people were kind to her. When they heard that George or Captain Jack had sent her, they showed her special things, told her special stories. She took pictures and wrote everything in her notebook. Her last stop was the park. She wanted to say goodbye to George. He was on his bench, feeding the birds. Sarah sat with him and told him about everything she had seen. "You helped me find the real London," she said, "not just the big famous places." George smiled. "London is the people, not the buildings. I'm glad you found that out." When it was time to go to the airport, Sarah felt sad to leave. London had become special to her. It was not perfect. Her hotel room was still bad. The weather had still been rainy some days, but she had found the heart of London, its people. At the airport, Sarah sent text messages to all the new friends she had made. Mary the nurse, David from the bookshop, Captain Jack. She promised to stay in touch. She would come back to London one day. On the plane, Sarah looked at all the gifts she had: the pin from the Japanese family, the book from Helen, the bookmark from David, the shell from Captain Jack. But the best gift had been the guard's smile. It had started everything. Sometimes the smallest thing can change everything. A smile that lasted 1 second had made Sarah look for the good things, not the bad things. It had made her talk to George, which led to all the other good parts of her trip. As the plane took off, Sarah looked down at London below. She was not the same person who had arrived a week ago. That Sarah had wanted perfect things. This Sarah knew that the best things were often small, unexpected, and came from the heart. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.